Okay, guys, we're going to get started right now. I'm going to start our next TED Talk, and we're going to put some focus on digitalization. And I want to introduce David from Celonis. They're the table right here in our group outside. So hopefully you got a chance to speak with them, find out more about them, and learn about their magic. Madison's also on that table, so check out Madison because I heard she's really doing great things out there. Let me introduce David. David's our customer transformation advisor. David's been in transformation and a functional specialist with the global operations in the finance, IT, and business operations area. He most recently led a specialty reinsurance company through ERP applications, procurement, OCR, machine learning, and contract management. Without further ado, let me have you come on stage and talk about the customer transformation, please. Is it easy if I move this, or?
Yeah, I'll keep it right there.
This is down, means go forward. Got it? Good?
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Can you hear me? Cool.
Yes.
So, quick introduction. My name is David Polastro. I'm a customer transformation advisor at Celonis. So in my role, I work with a lot of insurance clients around implementing and looking at ways of using our tool. And as we know, it's a very complex world out there. And what we see is there's a lot of challenges. And kind of relating this back to complexity, having spent 18 years at a specialty insurer, reinsurer, it was a challenge, especially if I look at it from the beginning, from a startup stage, it was great because there were no legacy issues. You could implement things, you could work with people, you didn't have silos. But that got kind of sideways, and it just happens in companies in general. Now, we're talking about insurance, but this is with all companies. But what we want to take a look at today is where we're seeing a lot of the companies are struggling with getting back with optimization, looking at inefficiencies, and looking how we can get people involved into that. Because literally, we talk about technology got us there, but really people got us into these issues, and they're going to help us get out of that. So what I want to look at is kind of the framework of people, process, and technologies as the key levers that we see when we talk with many of the companies. And what I'll start with is first is around the technology of what we see, some of the complexities that we're seeing. And obviously, these are complex companies, old systems, many of them are custom made, and they take a lot of time to maintain. Our legacy infrastructures. And right now, IT is very much focused on trying their own initiatives, which are getting stuff to the cloud, taking care of security, doing different things. And what happens now is there's a lot less IT resources to be on the back end to help with development and help the business areas get more efficient. And we talk about this inside-out development that we see. I look at this as more of IT is looking to help build solutions for the business and the customers. And I don't know if that's necessarily the right approach. This is where the business really has to kind of step in and help IT bridge that gap. And when we talk about process, you have to think about insurance companies in general. It's a conservative group. They're highly regulated. And oh, by the way, there's tons of regulations now that have popped up between SOX, HIPAA, GDPR, and now IFRS 17 coming for those international companies. The hits keep coming for compliance. And this puts a lot of work on the back office area. There are so many manual workarounds because of systems that are siloed. We are amazed when we talk to clients and we show them a simple workflow where they think it's a one step and it goes through 10. And we tell them, actually, you have a 20, 30-step process, and there's actually 10,000 variants. So it's very interesting when you get that aha moment. We also see a lot of different cottage roles developing because there are so many problems. You see groups developing teams to address those, that they build up whole areas, or they look at areas to kind of outsource that to maybe some people in this room that can handle that. So when you think about all this, there's a lot of rework and a lot of retouches going on in the different workflows. And when you look at where we are today, a lot of companies are looking at expense ratios. How do we best reduce cost? And it used to be insurance companies could cover those in their margins and no one knew. Well, now people know that there are money to be found by having more efficient processes. And then we get to our people side. You know, these failed initiatives have created kind of a jaded mentality with many workers. They're fearful of what IT is delivering, and there's just creates this kind of animosity and change resistant. And it's a change resistant not because they don't want to try something new. It seems like every time they try something new, they get more work to do another workaround. So it's quite an interesting thing. And then this lack of involvement, because of the business being so focused on the business, we see them not getting involved in these initiatives that they should be. And part of that's to blame on them because they really should put that time to be involved. And as we talked about, I heard Tom talking about changing talent pool. You've got a lot of new people working in the workforce. You've got digital workers, you have historians, you have a whole mix in there that are all trying to figure this out and work together on a lot of these new initiatives. And I look at this as creating work apathy in the sense of not the great resignation in terms of a physical resignation, but there's a lot of mental resignation. People have kind of gotten bored and they're just come in and make the donuts. And it's, when we talk to clients, I would say a good 60 to 70% of the companies are struggling with one of these areas or a congruency of all three of these together. And it is quite a mounting project for a lot of people. However, there is good news. We do work with a lot of good companies that are starting to get it. For example, we're working with Allianz, Barbara Kuth-Zell. We are working with Zurich Insurance, which is Eric Shan. These are leaders that are starting to see the picture of putting together people with a value-based approach. How do we fix processes? How do we tie all the business units together so we can work efficiently and really get people to help this automation journey that we're going to be on? So with that, I want to going through kind of where we see key success areas. And this one, first one cannot be overstated enough, is getting that key stakeholder engaged. And engage isn't just stamping this approval on a project. You want them to be an evangelist and really be involved in understanding the functionality, the value plan, and ties in a nice strategic plan, but also does a bottom-up approach, meaning let the business get involved and help drive values that you can put this together, that they all tie up to a bigger objective. And I know the second one about developing talent and looking at new reskilling, it goes without saying it is a definite need, but we have to look at this differently. And we're seeing different approaches to operating models and to teams, matrix reporting, more different ways of thinking. For example, we see a lot with communities in software where people are sharing ideas, gamification, hackathons, things that in the past were not that important. These are important for your newer workers to have newer ways of learning. We actually have clients that use our action flow tool to alert people of potential learning opportunities when we find a deficiency in one of their workflow steps that they go through. So there's many different ways to look at this and have an opportunity to change. Listen to the voice of the customer. This is both internally and externally. Looking at it from a standpoint of get your business people involved because you need to know what there's opportunities in a low risk area, that this helps with their overall change management as well. And improving the engagement in the business with IT is critical because you've got to get these process owners in with IT because both groups will learn from each other. IT has a lot of great knowledge in SDLC, project management that they need to teach the business so they can become citizen developers themselves. And lastly and not least is around instilling this human purpose. It's about people again. And I look at this in a two-prong approach, which is let's get to people doing value add work. When we talk to claims people, would you want them to be doing phone data entry, or do you want them to work on simulation or predictive modeling that could really stop claims, get really into the future, help society? And this really gets into the last point, which is around getting to those ESG, things that the new people, new workers want to be involved in. Because if we're helping these areas with diversification and tying this back both into the value stream, you're really helping the corporations move forward as good citizens, and they're walking the talk. And with that, I'll leave you with one quote that I like, which is from Van Gogh, which is, great things happen because of little things coming together. And we look at that when we talk about people. They're an important part that builds out this function to get us to more automation in the future. Okay? Thank you very much. Please stop by. I'd be glad to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Let's get to our next. Take us your thank you slide. Reach out to David if you have any questions or further. Hey, before I introduce our next panel, let's do this, man. I'm gonna do something silly. You ready? This is for attendance purposes for those who didn't show up in this room. I'm sure. Ready? You guys ready? Come on. Come on, guys. Let's go. You know what? Can you guys take a phone, take a picture of me, taking a picture of you, and then we put it on LinkedIn? How about that? How about that, huh? Come on. Everybody, come on, your phones, guys. Stay with me. It's a hard job up here. Come on, ready? 1, 2. I'm going to tag all of you. With that said, thank you, guys. Let's get to the next panel. Let's keep this moving. I want to get to that networking. Hey, we mentioned this a little bit. We're talking about digital MGAs and embedded insurance. It's here. It's now. Let's just call our speakers up. We have Jeremy, who's General Counsel and Head of Compliance at Boost Insurance, which offers insurance through their own digital experience to engage customers and increase sales. Jeremy is responsible for heading legal functions and providing oversight of BD, check and ops, and insurance team. We have Mark. He's currently the director of Hodonki Insurance, a digital-first insurance product for collectible watches. Ask about his collection. No. He has worked in fine art, jewelry, and collectible space for over 10 years. With his extensive knowledge, he became the U.S. business manager for the international auction house, Phillips. We have Ryan. He's part of Travelers, their head of growth and offerings and innovation. Ryan's out of Connecticut. He's an entrepreneur and a technologist with a track record of successful new venture executions, growth, and exits. We also have Benjamin. He has experience in the insurance and reinsurance industry, advising on a wide range of corporate, transactional, and regulatory matters. His specialties are M&A, service contracts, reinsurance, payer-provider risk matters, as well, of course, InsurTechs. My friend James, hey, James is the EVP of Growth and Partnerships at Breeza, a Toronto-based early-stage insurance as a service technology company. As a member of the senior leadership team there, James owns the customer lifecycle for Breeze's carrier, brokerage, and technology partners and serves as the internal voice for the customer. Let's welcome them on stage, get them started. James, over to you. Thank you, thank you. Come on, guys. Raise that bear, come on. Should I use this? You're gonna need to use all of them. They have to share. Yeah, sharing's caring, guys.
Sharing is caring. Hey, everybody. How are we feeling? Thank you for sticking around after the break. This panel discussion will be a little different than the first one for those that stood by and stuck around. I'm going to try to keep the focus off of me and on the panel, unlike the previous. Well. We're going to try to have a little fun, but also have a great conversation and extract all the learnings and knowledge from this wonderful panel. So I'll kick it off. Instead of just pointing towards one person, I would love everyone's thoughts on the true definition or definitions of what is embedded insurance. I think there's a lot of misnomers. It's a name, it's a term that gets thrown out there quite a bit. But all of you have touched tangentially or as part of your core business embedded. So in no particular order, maybe Ryan, you can kick it off because you're closest to me, but how would you kind of define what is or what is not embedded?
Yeah, well, there we go. That's a great first question because in my internal circles and then those that I network with, that question comes up all the time, and there doesn't seem to be one definition. We struggle internally with just one definition of what that is. But I think if I were to come up with one sentence, it would be, how do you create the entire experience from educating the consumer, educating the customer, allowing them to make that purchase in a single place, and then also administering that policy as well. So that's how I would envision it.
That's great. Thank you.
You know, it's funny. Our industry as a whole and our InsurTech revolution subset loves to come up with these, buzzwords that no one sets any sort of uniform practice around. And that is exactly what embedded insurance is. Just like InsurTech, if I asked everyone in here to define InsurTech, we'd get 100 different answers, even though it's not a new concept and it's not a new thing. So when you have something that is amorphous in that sense, that each company can look at in a different way, you're going to get all of those different answers. At its core, embedded insurance is the abstraction of insurance functionality utilizing technology so that you're bringing the empowerment of that technology to third parties that are typically not in your traditional insurance value chain, and allowing them to utilize that vertical for the modern consumer. I think you can get bogged down in the technologies, that support all of this. And I learned long ago not to rely on my computer science for lawyer's certificate for anyone other than my grandparents. But the truth is that if the functionality of insurance is digitized and you're leveraging technology to bring it to the point of demand with the consumer and allowing that modern consumer to access that insurance that which they would have to seek out on their own, I think that is really the umbrella of embedded insurance today.
So as Roy mentioned in his intro, I come from the world of fine art and kind of broadly speaking, tangible personal property for any trust and estate lawyers in the room. And like crickets, there's none. Okay, perfect. So all the companies there are more or less dinosaurs where everything is conducted on the Microsoft Office suite. So pretty much embedded insurance to me means offering insurance for these collectibles that people love and enjoy, but at the most appropriate time in their journey, whether it's at the point of checkout when they first purchase it or after an appraisal. So, just putting the option to purchase it in front of them at the most appropriate time.
Thank you. So as the outside counsel on here, as we define embedded insurance in quotes in an agreement, right? It is really something at the point of sale is kind of when we think of it, at the most appropriate time, and getting to the consumer when they want it immediately, before they even think they need insurance. I have a client that has an appraisal software tool for jewelry. It spits out a quote as soon as you get the appraisal. They don't even know they need insurance, but they get the appraisal and the quote at the same time. So that's the embodiment of embedded insurance.
It would seem that in defining what is embedded insurance, there is the assumption that we're talking about a homogeneous risk group, people that are looking for the same type of maybe coverage. They share similar characteristics. Obviously, affinity insurance and affinity brokerage has been around for a very, very long time. Should we think of embedded as just a type of affinity or affinity as a type of embedded, or are we getting into dangerous semantics? That's to anyone. Well,
I'll take that.
Start with the lawyer.
Right, semantics go with the lawyer, or one of the two lawyers on here. I would say the difference between affinity is you're getting closer to the point of sale, but it's not at the point of sale. Embedded truly is the second you think of insurance, or the second you need insurance, even before you think of it, that insurance is in your face, easily accessible, and easily bought. I think affinity groups is simply narrowing the pool of who you're offering the insurance to.
Does anyone have any opposing thoughts to that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's an opposing thought. I think it's a continuation, and not just because we're the fellow lawyers up here, but I think what it really is, it's the actual shrinking of the insurance gap. And that's between what the modern consumer has access to, to coverage versus what is actually purchased out there. And obviously the affinity, the market is there, but this is in that point of sale at the time, point of demand, that it gives you the best chance to shrink that. Now, depending on line, depending on business, that could be for the, the greater good of society, that there's third party, coverage and someone, has issues there, or it could be for the individual, consumer. And so I think that is really the guiding light behind the embedded insurance market.
Yeah. And point of sale solutions really, I think, take up most of the oxygen in the room when we talk about embedded, but embedded also could perhaps be insurance being included in the purchase price, the lease price of some type of good or services. You're smiling back there, Ben.
So there's there's a lot of issues associated with regulatory of embedded and bundling insurance. New York frowns on that a lot of cases, and so you want to be very careful if you're going to be tying the sale of something to an insurance sale. But there's ways of doing it. Come ask me.
Well, that was going to be a topic or a question I was going to pose much later in the panel, but why don't we go there now since you did bring it up. So not to focus the attention on...
I keep talking.
On Ben or Jeremy, the attorneys on the panel, but what are those considerations from a compliance and regulatory perspective that one must think about with regards to opportunities or hurdles in the embedded space?
So there's a couple of things that jump out on this, especially with respect to how do you pay your partner, right? They want, based on sales, if they make a sale through your API, they want to be paid a commission. Are they licensed as an agency? Can you commission insure in the state? Is there a referral fee? What about if you're selling it to surplus lines? People expect instantaneous insurance. What about getting your declinations, right? In many states, you have to get something called a double declination from admitted carriers if you're selling on a surplus lines basis. And people do that, oh, I got one 6 months ago. Tell that to a lady when they come investigating you. Or they're saying, oh, what about an application? Oh, my application's just this work stream. Did you file the application? Do you print that out? And I don't mean to be the area where sales go to die, right? There's ways of figuring this out in a compliant manner, but it takes hard work. And I think that's something Boost has really worked on for some of its sales.
I hope so.
Come on, I'm doing nice work.
No, I appreciate it. No, I was fortunate to come into a company that very early on in a highly regulated space, trying to do new things in that regulated space, realized that you got to bring on lawyers pretty soon, not just for my own benefit to save me from the soul-sucking halls of law firm life, but because not all. Yeah, forgive me. I'm a recovering, law firm attorney, but it is really to play in the gray. And that's what this is. The embedded insurance market, listen, our industry is predicated upon antiquated regulatory schemas that have been around for hundreds of years. They weren't contemplating the technological advancements. They weren't contemplating embedded insurance offerings. And so how do you overlay? Part of that is working with regulators to try and change. But as with everything in government, that takes a really long time, and you'll die on the vine if that's what you're trying. And so from a regulatory standpoint, you have to find not ways around it for anyone who wants to report me to the regulatory authorities.
Market conduct exam?
Yeah, but ways to work within or, tangential to it. So you're talking about, when you talk about embedded, how is that offered if it's an unlicensed construct, like you said? Do you embed a widget that, allows for ownership over the URL that is actually tied to a license? Is it click-through? Is it redirection? There's a lot of opportunity out there. You just have to be willing to kind of step out on that ledge. And I think that's what everyone in this room really does in the InsurTech industry. And, we've been fortunate enough to kind of be on that front line at Boost. Oh.
I'll add to that as a non-attorney, and I thought I got rid of all the attorneys when I left the office today, but they followed me onto the panel. But one of the challenges and advantages of being at a large carrier in an innovation group is that we are supported by not only a lot of lawyers, but a depth of experience that helps to ensure that we don't wade into these dark waters. And I joked for a while with the attorneys that, look, I just keep me out of jail and we'll build good things. But part of that is building a relationship with our legal partners within Travelers. It's taken a while, I think, for those of us in innovation to let them know that we're not bad people and we're really not trying to send anyone to jail. But those relationships are important because that creativity that you're describing, it doesn't always come natural to attorneys to be creative and help ideate around ways to make things work. But sometimes you stumble upon, an attorney that really just wants to be an amazing partner in that ideation process, and it can be really powerful, and we can make things happen.
We do exist.
Locklord, LLP.
Didn't know there was going to be shameless self-promotion on this panel, but so be it. I've always had the hypothesis that the industry, insurance in general, just gets a pretty bad rap, right? Everyone will stand up and say, more innovation, more innovation. We're using technology that was used 50, 30, 70, 100 years ago. My theory has always been that the industry probably needs more change in the regulatory landscape, meaning like it needs more change with regards to regulation than it really does with regards to technology. And I wonder if, having unified laws and regulations across all 50 states would be nirvana for embedded and InsurTech, or is that a false premise and is that just the wrong way to think about things?
It would be nirvana. It's never going to happen, and it would put me out of a job. So
we don't want anyone unemployed. Well, let's kick it back to the carrier side of things. So when you, Ryan, when you think about innovation with your team, does embedded provide you with automatic opportunities with the products that you already have on the shelf, or to participate and play in the embedded space, does that require changes and innovation and differences in the way that you currently work?
Well, I think it's yes to all of that. I think that I think as an industry are looking at different ways that we can leverage our existing products in new ecosystems to meet the customer where they are. But I also think that as we look at the different opportunities, we all only have so much bandwidth and so many resources. And so when we look at embedded, there is a way to look at the existing products that are compulsory, existing products that are non-compulsory, and then new products that are non-compulsory. And I think that a lot of the opportunity lies in that last category. When you look at things like cyber and other types of, insurances, maybe around digital assets, and you say, well, it's a green space, it's a white space, and there are ways to take advantage of that and to try new embedded technologies where customers are also experiencing new products themselves.
Would you like to plug anything that Travelers is working on with this audience?
I can't.
It's okay. I can shamelessly promote myself.
Go ahead, Mark.
I knew someone would.
So, no, anyway. But so I think an interesting point that you were bringing up was like kind of these green fields of opportunity, and at least with what we're doing at Hodinkee Insurance is like, watch insurance is nothing new. It's existed for a really long time. It's just that in order to obtain a policy for your watch, you'd really only have two options. The first is to add it onto a rider on your homeowner's policy, or the second is if you were a mega collector, a traditional broker would love to take you out to lunch and get your premium. But if you're a normal person like me, a broker doesn't want to take me out to lunch. And also, like, if you put it on what I own, the insurance policy I have on my house or my apartment, they don't understand my watch, or, I'm a big collector actually of fine art. They really have no idea what I'm trying to put on the policy. So just, being able to digitize the application process and the entire binding process so that way kind of your more average consumer can no longer be underinsured is really one of these green fields, at least in the collectible space.
So I think it's really interesting. Maybe I'll just give you some shameless self-promotion.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mark doesn't know this. I happen to be a little bit of a watch guy myself, and I have been a reader of Hodinkee online and the blog, all the social media and all that type of wonderful content. So you were really a lifestyle brand that has now pivoted into providing insurance services. So can you talk a little bit more about that transition, what that meant, and how you thought about embedded? And then from the standpoint, just do you want to be identified with your brand, or do you want to be more identified with insurance, or is it a mix of both?
Oh, that's a really good question that my CEO would love to answer.
Your CEO here?
He's not here.
Okay.
No. So we're safe. But no, that's a great point. So Hodinkee more or less started out, I'd hate to be so reductive, but it started out as a watch blog, basically, for collectors. And we have writers on staff still that would write pieces on kind of the newest watch drops or like what's like the hot takes in the watch market. And then we basically expanded into e-commerce for watches. And that's pretty much the bread and butter of Hodinkee now, which is the publication of articles and also the e-commerce for luxury watches. And then about 2 years ago, we spun up Hodinkee Insurance, which is basically insurance for collectible watches. And it's been way more successful than I think they originally planned. So to answer the question, how do we want to be known? I think we want to be known as the place for all things watches. So whether that's reading about watches, purchasing watches, insuring your watch, we want to be a one-stop shop for that. And I just kind of oversee this one division of it.
That's great. Thank you for that.
So quick question then. So are you underwriting quicker, better, or differently? Like, because watches, right? So are you providing, more coverage, or is it speed to market, or what is your secret sauce?
So essentially, we're writing way more policies than your traditional broker. I think the latest stat that I read on our metrics was last year we measured a 4-week period, same week this year versus last year. We were up 200% in the number of quotes we issued. So it's a lot of volume. We're servicing people who traditionally just would be uninsured or just wouldn't have their watches insured totally. And it's a really good customer service because you can download the Hodinkee app and get a quote right now. Yeah, you can do it. We don't take Apple Watches, though, which I see you're wearing. Yeah, sorry.
It's too cheap.
You can purchase Apple Care. Yeah.
That's some very fast underwriting.
Yeah. Good, our filters caught you.
That's fascinating. And just to kind of put a cap on that, so it's a fully digital experience end to end, but you do provide in-person or over the phone advice and those types of things? Or?
Yep. We have licensed brokers on staff who answer phone calls, emails when you have a particular question. When you're a really big collector, that's when you have to liaise with someone on staff to get your custom quote.
Yeah, they have to have lunch with your boss? Is that...
I don't have the T&E budget for it yet, so.
This brings up a great segue to a question I wanted to start with. Ryan and others are happy to jump in, but a traditional risk factor that always gets highlighted with regards to embedded is the idea of channel conflict, right? The idea of either removing an agent or a broker from the transaction, and removing the advisory services, and just strictly providing an end-to-end digital buying experience. So from a traveler's perspective, with the projects that you've worked on, maybe the things that you've launched in the past, how do you think about channel conflict with your partners?
Yeah, well, and I thought you were going to ask also about risk exposure as well.
I'm going to ask about risk exposure as well.
So I'm going to answer both because it might be related. First, I think in terms of channel conflict, travelers, especially as a legacy carrier, has depended for many years on an independent agency backbone to the business and continues to. And surprisingly, within the innovation group, or maybe it's surprising to me at this point, we do a lot of work with our independent agents in development of these products because we can imagine that many of them will be deployed, distributed through these types of channels. They're still embedded in some type of ecosystem, but they might be introduced through agents, or they could be utilized as the agents are selling other types of products. In relation to risk, since you asked, yeah, there, certainly from an underwriting perspective, there have been concerns. The direct-to-consumer model for years, I think, has brought up different risk exposures. But one of the advantages, I think, of an embedded solution is that you do have the opportunity to select where it's being embedded and who that partner is. So in many ways, you're participating in a community that you are comfortable with the risk on.
That's great.
Thanks for asking.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure. This is
back to the affinity group issue, right? You're choosing who you want to have access to that product at the time.
Yeah, one of the things I'd like to ask next is an off agenda topic, but I think about the earlier presentations talking about the concept of trust, and we're talking about TikTok, for example. Do you think embedded has limitations in the sense that do you think consumers have an over-reliance on trust with regards to the medium by which they maybe interact with an insurance transaction versus other transactions? It's a nice way of saying, will people trust TikTok as a platform to buy insurance on, or is it Instagram, or will I start buying business insurance on LinkedIn? Does that matter? Does the platform or delivery matter, or?
I mean, what, 70% of people get the majority of their news from TikTok and Instagram? I mean, if you're trusting it for your news, you're going to use it for most purchases, I think.
And also, working for a company that is like very acutely aware of its brand and brand identity around like lifestyle and luxury watches, I do think the brand associated with the policy matters. The marketplace, let's call it, where you find it, whether that's TikTok or Instagram, it could matter to you reach a broader audience, but it's really the brand of the policy and like who's underwriting it. So I think that still plays a huge role.
Great. We're also on this panel supposed to address the role of MGAs in embedded solutions. So I'm going to pivot a little bit and put my friend Jeremy on the spot and talk about MGAs. You know a little bit about that from your time and working at Boost. Have there been situations where you perhaps were involved in a conversation where you advised someone against forming or building an MGA to solve a embedded solution?
I would say no. The answer is no. The question is not whether to do it, it's when to do it. And so I really kind of focus that more towards when you're dealing with large scale enterprise level type of companies, insurance is clearly not their core vertical. And so either they have now, realized that there is a vertical with insurance adjacent to that they can monetize, or someone, like the salespeople at Boost, whisper it in their ears. They have to gain the trust to invest in becoming, that MGA. And I actually want to pull back a second because MGA is a term that can be thrown around, and my fellow lawyer is laughing, but which doesn't mean it's funny.
It's not funny.
But there are other ways that you can become licensed to enable digital distribution, not just being an MGA. You can be a licensed producer. You can be the agent or broker, all somewhat synonymous depending on what jurisdiction and different country you are in. So MGA, we can use that as kind of the vehicle for our conversation, but it's a timing issue. So, for instance, and, shameless plugs all around. So, I mean, these companies have to find that there's market, traction. There's an addressable market. There's going to be uptake in that. And so do you invest in bringing on people with licenses? Do you invest on building out the agency side that you were just talking about so that you can do it? Or do you partner with, I don't know, a company that is an insurance infrastructure company that provides the organizational, the tech, the capital, so that you can plug in, leverage their license, leverage their infrastructure, their policy admin system that's fully API that you can just plug into and say, sell your insurance within 2 weeks, see what kind of uptick. Now, I won't lie, the economics for being unlicensed, the ability to utilize data, which is the real undervalued component or people don't realize, that is, you take a hit when you're unlicensed. However, I would tell people, I'd rather you go full in when you feel full in because our success rate is going to be there. If you're kind of half-assing it and you're not convinced behind the product, behind the construct, it's never going to work. Your success is Boost's success, is the carrier's success, and the reinsurer's success. We all have to be aligned. And so, to take it and, long-winded answer, but it's not an answer that we ever say, don't do it. The answer is this the right time? And we have to gain that trust. Going back to trust, it's got to be about when to.
That's a great perspective. Thank you.
So to that end, isn't one of the issues also, do you have reinsurance capacity? Is that something Boost helps their clients with, finding that reinsurance capacity, especially in this hard market?
We most certainly do. Yeah, I did not prepare him, and the firm is not retained by us. But no, Boost looked at what does it take to become that MGA first and foremost, and we package it. So that is, like I said, that's all the compliance. That's underwriting and filing, that's policy management, that's claims. It looked at the technology, so a API-driven proprietary policy admin system that can house all of these things, and that's the capital. So that's the reinsurance capacity. That's also the licensure of a fronting carrier, because licensing is capital in its own way. And so you have to factor all of that into, and it's go to market. You want to get in and even test your addressable market capabilities. You can't wait 2 years, with all due respect to my incumbent friends, that it takes a long time to get things off the map. We did the hard stuff first so that you can plug in, and that's something that I think there's a lot of value in.
That's great. Speaking of hard markets and just the general macro environment, any thoughts or predictions with regards to investor sentiment and the willingness of VCs and other investors to actually back and support new MGA entities? Any predictions, any tea leaves that you can read right now that you'd want to share some thoughts or insights in?
I feel like, and we've seen this, and we represent a lot of seed stage and Series C, Series D companies. If you're showing unit profitability or an ability to get to unit profitability, even if you're not profitable overall, you're going to get investment, right? And that investment may not be directly in your company. It may be providing reinsurance capacity. Companies like Gallatin Point and others are doing reinsurance vehicles, and that's how they're doing their investments, right? Showing you that they're backing your product because they see a long-term future.
I mean, as a startup MGA, I sure as hell hope there's appetite for both of those things. I do. What I think is that there's going to be a little bit more centralized focus. And I think that investors and capacity providers alike are going to be more keen into their due diligence process as to what will be a successful partnership with an MGA. They're not going to give the delegated authority that an MGA really needs to operate in this space out as freely as it has. I think it's all kind of coming together. I think the capacity is there, even in the insane hard markets of cyber. The supply is definitely there, and so you have to then just deploy it smartly. And I think that's happening on both investment and on the reinsurance capacity side.
Just don't write hurricane coverage in Florida.
That's a different panel discussion. Well, we have about a minute left. I need to land this plane, but I'd love to ask the panel, starting with Ryan, any advice that you might have to a potential client, a carrier, an MGA that is considering embedded as part of their distribution strategies, sort of best practices and advice.
Yeah, and it's quick, and it goes back to the earlier comments. I mean, constantly go back to the human-centered component to it. It's all about the people using it. If you look at it and you're not going to use it, or you would feel uncomfortable using it, then don't do it.
People helping people.
People helping people, and that is a perfect segue because it's UX. That's what I would say. It's that front-facing front end. If that becomes clunky, if that becomes friction for the point of sale, it'll never happen. And that's a problem in our compliance-heavy world, is to make sure that that front end seamlessly integrates into the back so that it doesn't create a drop-off in your customer acquisition.
You stole my answer, so I have to think of something else on the fly. But I agree. I think your front end has to be seamless, and also you just need to have product market fit, at least in this category. If you're not offering an insurance product that people want to buy, then it's it's probably not going to do so hot.
Make sure you know where the gray is and where the black and white lines are, right? And don't ever go over the black and white lines because that's where you get in trouble, but play in the gray as much as you want.
What a way to end the discussion. Let's give a nice big round of applause for Ben and Mark and Jeremy and Ryan. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, panel. Hold on 1 second, guys, before we get out there. I have 4 things I have to go over with you. Thank you, panel. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. All right, stay with me. We're going to go quick because I'm going to hold you up. It's before the food. So I'm going to rapid fire this because there's drinks, there's food. You know how that goes. So let's recap, man. We had 2 panels. One was just turbocharged productivity. That was ridiculous. That was awesome. We had Lisa talking about the future proof with empowerment. We had David's focus on digitalization. We had attorneys who talked about embedded insurance, watches, and unlike my scalp, shameless plugs. Ridiculous. Loving it. Number two, hey, we have Covenant House out there and we have Colonis. So you know why you got to talk to Covenant House? They're doing this sleep out November 4th. They have a whole bunch of other insurance companies and carriers doing it too. You should find out who's going there and talk to Sue. One, Colonis is out there. Go out there. Hey, do you know InsurTech has 4,998 followers? Who is going to be 5,000? That's all I'm saying. All right, I'm on number 3. I have 4. This is 3, so stay for 4, please. I want to say thank you to Ty, Aisha, James, who helped us out and get us in front there. I want to give a round of applause to Chung. He's leaving us. He's going back to Korea. Chung, raise your hand. He's our intern. Bruna's helping out. She came from Brazil to relieve Chung. Isn't that funny? That's what's going on. So thank her too. I want to thank David and Tony, putting together great events all the time, bringing you guys all together. Big ups. Hey, the panel and speakers, you make this fun. No doubt. The conversation up here, it's entertaining, not just informative. So thank you. And all of you guys for coming in here. Number 4. Hey, I got to change the slide. Hold on. You got to sign up to our events. That's number 4. Sign up events. And hey, if you want to achieve unimaginable growth, let's talk later. That's my plug. All right, guys, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Sign for events March and November. The next one's coming up. Have some food, drinks, and mingle and do the right thing.